The King's Avatar, Chapter 1536, An Opportunity Not Seized. Audio source, wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1536, An Opportunity Not Seized. Translator, Gnome Yummy. Editor, Gnome Yummy. The roiling heat from the lava caused the outlines of the two characters to appear hazy. Han Wenqing's in a shaky situation. Commentator Pan Lin exclaimed, after seeing desert dust repeatedly close in, only for Lord Grimm to use a movement skill to pull away again. But he hasn't been shaken off, Li Yibo said calmly from the side. This thrilling fight had put Pan Lin in an excited state, commentating almost non-stop. But Li Yibo, during this intense match, was in fact uncommonly calm. This match, for him, was also filled with many memories. As first-generation players, Yishu and Han Wenqing's rivalry was a symbol of their time. In that era, the alliance had just begun, and many technical and tactical aspects of glory were still in their formative stages. In that setting, individual strength would become the deciding factor of a match. And Li Yibo, as a member of Team Tyranny, could be said to have completely experienced this symbol of that era. To this day, he still remembered when Excellent Era had won their third consecutive championship, the helplessness and despair that Yishu's domination had brought upon them. Everyone in the team had felt discouraged and frustrated. But their captain Han Wenqing had never bowed down. Even if he only had a sliver of health remaining, he was the kind of person who would fight relentlessly until the very end. Scene after scene from those old seasons played through Li Yibo's mind. In comparison, he truly didn't feel that desert dust closing in or widening the gap was any problem. Han Wenqing had faced far more despairing situations in the past without wavering. It was just as Li Yibo had calmly said to Pan Lin, he still hadn't been shaken off. Ah, chance! Pan Lin suddenly shouted. The expanse of lava to the right of these two characters came to an end and suddenly narrowed. Lord Grimm was sticking to the side, looking like he wanted to turn right. But at this moment, if desert dust suddenly used a jumping skill, it should be strong enough for him to directly leap across the lava to arrive in front of Lord Grimm. It was indeed a chance. Li Yibo's eyes lit up. But to everyone's surprise, although Lord Grimm looked like he was about to turn right, after taking one step, he suddenly began to swift run left. Ah! Pan Lin already let out a shout of surprise. If desert dust had leapt like he thought he would, never mind catching Lord Grimm, he would simply be 1,000 miles off. But desert dust hadn't moved, as though Han Wenqing hadn't detected that chance at all. It was a feint, but unfortunately he didn't fool Han Wenqing, Li Yibo said, as though nothing had happened. With regard to this match, his position couldn't be clearer. He resolutely supported Tyranny's Han Wenqing. But he couldn't let it show too obviously, so he pretended to be very calm. Right now, Lord Grimm is heading left. Desert dust continues to chase him. But Coach Li, if Han Wenqing had seen through Yishu's feint, then he should have also seen that Yishu was preparing to control Lord Grimm to move left, right? Then why didn't he make any anticipating movements? If he had, then he'd be able to catch him, right? Pan Lin asked. Li Yibo hesitated. That was right, why hadn't he? Desert dust also had a few explosive instant movement skills, and Han Wenqing had been saving them all this time. But just now had been a pretty good opportunity. Why hadn't he used them? There was a chance, but it still wasn't good enough. Quote, at this time, Yu Wenzhou was also responding to Huang Shaoxin's message. This still wasn't good enough? I'd say it was pretty perfect. Quote, but this time, Huang Shaoxin disagreed with Yu Wenzhou's analysis. His earlier message had been just like what Pan Lin had said, about how Han Wenqing could have made a predictive movement in that moment. To you, maybe it was enough, but for him it may not have been enough. Quote, this was what Yu Wenzhou replied. Huang Shaoxin paused, understanding Yu Wenzhou's meaning. Huang Shaoxin hadn't had a firm grasp of that opportunity either, but a 50% chance of success was good enough for him to take action. In desperate times, 10% was good enough too. But for Han Wenxing, he was no longer at peak performance, and judging from his attitude and choices over the course of this season, he was very aware of this fact as well. A few years ago, if faced with that opportunity, Han Wenxing probably would have controlled Desert Dust forward without a second thought. He might have even been fooled by Yishu's feint. But now, a false action, or an opportunity with a lower chance of success, wouldn't spur him into action lightly. He had changed, but in reality he wasn't actually beginning to retreat or anything. He was just valuing his own drive and vigor, because he knew that he no longer had the ability to repeatedly enter a high-intensity explosive state. While Yu Wenzhou and Huang Shaoxian discussed Han Wenxing's choice from the perspective of opportunity, a discussion amongst the players of another team took it a step further. He didn't seize that chance, but he established a stronger suppressive atmosphere, said Zhang Boteo of Samsara. Samsara had already entered the finals. The outcome of this match would tell them their opponent. Everyone on the team was curious about the result, and they were now gathered in front of the television to watch this match. From the performance, it looks like Yishu has the advantage, but in reality he doesn't have the initiative. Zhang Boteo said, consulting the teammate next to him. Zhou Zikai nodded. If it continues like this. Because he also didn't fully understand the map, Sun Shang couldn't make any particularly insightful predictions either. Who do you think will win? Zhang Boteo, smiling, suddenly asked Sun Shang. Sun Shang was silent for a while, before opening his mouth. I hope Yishu wins. Understood. Zhang Boteo continued to smile. After a year on the same team, he of course understood Sun Zhang's personality. He hoped that Yishu would win, and he hoped that Happy would win, but it definitely wasn't because of any feelings of attachment toward Excellent Era or One Autumn Leaf. He hoped for this only because of last year's failure in the Challenger League. He received One Autumn Leaf from Yishu, only for Yishu to turn around with a new character, pull together a new team, and ferociously defeat him. Never mind an arrogant and proud youth like him, anyone in his place would feel incomparably depressed. Even though Samsara had won twice against Happy during the regular season, those matches didn't have the decisive finality that the Challenger League finals or the league playoffs did. Sun Zhang's frustration and depression couldn't be soothed by those two victories. He needed a more decisive stage. The playoffs. Seeing that Happy had the chance to make it to the playoffs, Sun Shang was genuinely happy. The reason for this was, naturally, that he wanted to meet them on this stage. And then, when the final rankings and the playoffs bracket came out, it was revealed that there was only one chance for the two teams to meet, in the finals. For Sun Shang, this stage couldn't be more perfect. It was 100 times more decisive than the Challenger League stage had been. But Sun Shang was still a bit worried for Happy, fearing that they wouldn't be able to enter the finals. But now, Happy, Tyranny, this last match's outcome would determine who would meet Samsara in the playoffs. Out of all of Samsara, Sun Shang was the most concerned about this. Half an hour before the match began, he was already waiting in front of the television. Turn around and face him. What are you running for? Sun Shang was much more immersed in the battle than anyone else. But Yishu's Lord Grimm still didn't turn around. The chase continued for another round, and a fork appeared up AEAD once again. This was already the end of the map. Straight AEAD was lava, so there was no way to continue forward. Only left, or right. All this time, it had looked like Desert Dust was Yishu's kite, only responding to his attacks. But at this moment, he suddenly made a movement before any attack came. WuxiaWorldAudio.com. Desert Dust suddenly headed left. Just as everyone was wondering whether it was intentional, Yishu's Lord Grimm was already moving right. A mistake in prediction? Even as everyone wondered this, Desert Dust was already nimbly switching directions to head right. but it looked like the path he took wasn't headed directly for Lord Grimm. It seemed to be slanted, leaving him some space, positioning himself to force Lord Grimm toward the right. The experts all saw through it. Slanting leftward was a predictive move against the scenario that the opponent would go left. Yishu of course could very easily not go left, and Han Wenqing didn't care that his prediction wasn't correct, because his goal was simply to force Yishu to go right. What was the point of going right? Turning right here meant sticking to the very south of this map. Not far from here was the position where desert dust had spawned. That was to say, that area was the area that Han Wenqing had studied at the very start of the match before the two sides had met. And to Yishu, that area was a foreign area he had just stumbled into. The difference was between having glanced at it once before, and only beginning to glance at it now. Would victory be determined by such a small difference? Everyone watched as Yishu's Lord Grimm headed toward the area that Han Wenqing had seen before. But then, he suddenly moved horizontally to the right, straight toward the lava. What was he doing? Everyone was only wondering, but Han Wenqing's actions were even faster than their questions. Desert dust also immediately cut toward the lava. Lord Grimm jumped up. Suicide? Of course not. In midair, the myriad manifestations umbrella opened, the spokes of the umbrella unfolded, rotor wing. Lord Grimm directly flew across the lava, heading toward the path that he had taken here. What about Han Wenqing? He could turn right and see the path he had taken, but this lava in the middle wasn't something he could cross just with a jump. Yishu had clearly waited for him to reach this position before taking that action. What was more awkward was that Han Wenqing couldn't control desert dust to immediately turn and run after him. Yishu had full control over his flight path with the rotor wing, so if Han Wenqing tried to seize a position, Yishu could simply turn around in midair. Lord Grimm jumped first, then activated the skill, giving him many possible positions to choose and leaving himself this room to breathe. Just a bit of maneuvering, with so much hidden within. The audience couldn't grasp any of this in this moment, but all of the experts understood the difficult situation Han Wenqing was currently in. But the more difficult the situation, the faster Han Wenqing made his decision. Desert dust resolutely rushed forward. Had he judged where Lord Grimm would fly? But after seeing him move like this, Yishu could simply control Lord Grimm to fly back. But just at that moment, Desert Dust's legs left the ground. He had actually jumped. Was he crazy? Everyone was shocked. It seemed as though Han Wenqing wanted to directly attack Lord Grimm in midair, but no matter what, a striker couldn't jump that kind of distance, right? And this jump, wasn't it a bit short? It definitely wasn't at the limit. Wait a second. That thing sticking out of the bubbling lava, what was that? End chapter.
The King's Avatar, Chapter 1537 Achilles' Heel, audio source, wusharworldaudiobook.com. Chapter 1537, Achilles' Heel. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. The audience didn't have time to check closely what the thing floating in the lava was when desert dust dropped down. The lava splashed like water where his foot landed. It was only then did they notice that he had stepped onto that thing. His character didn't sink. This time, everyone could see clearly that the thing floating in the lava was a small rock, which could be used as a foothold. With how fast the lava and hot air flowed, it was a wonder how Han Wenqing had discovered this hidden foothold. Nevertheless, they knew that once he landed on the foothold, he would be able to act again. Soaring Tiger. The force from the kick pushed the lava aside as desert dust flew into the air. Soaring Tiger didn't allow him to fly, but it was still a powerful jump. Han Wenqing adjusted his jumping angle well. Desert dust was like an artillery shell as he headed straight for Lord Grimm, who had activated rotor wings. After they crashed into each other, where would they land? Perhaps even Han Wenqing didn't know. He was only certain of one thing. Whether he fell into the lava or the water, he would definitely be able to drag Lord Grimm together with him. Not good. Yishu felt a bad premonition when he saw Desert Dust leap towards the lava. He didn't think the old rival of his was discouraged to the point of wanting to kill himself. During Han Wenking's first jump, Yishu had anticipated where he would land. Even though he wasn't able to see the landing spot, Yishu was certain that Han Wenking had found a place for him to jump again from. Soaring Tiger. Yishu had made the prediction the moment Han Wenking acted. By the time he realized that Han Wenking would use this skill, Desert Dust had already landed on that small rock and used Soaring Tiger to rocket towards Lord Grimm. However, this prediction was enough for Yishu to react. Life and death in a match depended on these small moments. Lord Grimm dropped down. An unexpected response. Forward, backwards, left, right, up. The audience had helped imagine the different scenarios for Yishu. However, no one had expected him to go down. From everyone's perspective, by moving down, Lord Grimm would be exactly where Han Wenking wanted him to be. Maybe it was precisely this reason that Han Wenking would be caught off guard. Some people thought of themselves as clever coming up with this reasoning. For example, Pan Lin. He was just about to say his thoughts, but the changes in the battle were too fast. There was no time for him to interject. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions suddenly sounded from in the air. Lord Grimm had retracted his rotor wings. The myriad manifestations umbrella was held in front of him, sending anti-tank missiles towards the incoming Desert Dust. Desert Dust had no way to dodge these missiles from in the air. Soaring Tiger was still being used though, so his character wouldn't be knocked back by the explosions. Desert Dust might not be knocked back, but Lord Grimm would. Using the recoil from the anti-tank missiles, Lord Grimm dropped even faster diagonally downwards. The lava was still beneath him. However, Lord Grimm had plenty of skills in his arsenal. He had methods to move around in the air and get himself to shore. As for Desert Dust, Soaring Tiger had missed, and he had no way to move around in the air. It seemed like Han Wenking could only watch as his Desert Dust fell into the lava. Han Wenking's play had been too risky. Countless people sighed. However, the two players on stage didn't think it was over. Han Wenking hadn't given up, and Yishu didn't think that he was safe yet. Amidst the smoke and fire from the explosions, Desert Dust dropped down at a speed far faster than Lord Grimm. 1,000-ton drop. Han Wenking had unexpectedly used this skill, and what he wanted was to fall down faster. When he reached Lord Grimm's height, he cancelled 1,000-ton drop. Launching kick. Desert Dust moved sideways in the air, his legs kicking out. He was falling directly downwards, while Lord Grimm was falling down diagonally. There was quite a bit of distance between them. However, Han Wenking reacted extremely fast. The moment the anti-tank missiles were fired, he had predicted that Lord Grimm would fall down diagonally. It was at that moment he used 1,000-ton drop. One was moving diagonally downwards, while the other was moving straight downwards. The two characters had begun moving at slightly different times. However, 1,000-ton drop was faster. In the blink of an eye, Han Wenking had caught up, and Lord Grimm was within launching kick's range. Even if unspecialized characters had plenty of ways to move around in the air, Han Wenking's response had been too fast. Yishu had no time to use another skill. In that instant, Yishu could only have Lord Grimm raise his umbrella above him. He had to at least try to parry it. By parrying it, he could keep control of his character. If he was directly hit by Desert Dust's launching kick, Lord Grimm would be sent flying towards wherever Han Wenking wanted. Their attacks met in the air. Ye Xiu watched the approaching attack carefully. Lord Grimm's myriad manifestations umbrella was held at a certain angle, ready to use the force from the kick to move where he wanted to. But Desert Dust had the same idea too. When his launching kick landed on the umbrella, Lord Grimm used the force to fall down even faster, while Desert Dust twisted his body in the air, using his other leg to kick. Whirlwind kick combo. Despite being in the air, Han Wenking was able to complete a two-hit combo. His launching kick landed on the myriad manifestations umbrella, followed by a whirlwind kick. He was still falling down too, and he was even able to move horizontally again in the air. Everyone was struck dumb. How many inputs had been needed for him to borrow the force from launching kick to position his whirlwind kick? Pa. This time, the sound of a kick hitting flesh could be heard. It hit. Tyranny's fans were feeling excited, but when they took another look, no. Lord Grimm had suddenly swung his arm. In his hand was part of the myriad manifestations umbrella. He had actually been able to parry Desert Dust's whirlwind kick. The spectators weren't able to tell what skill Lord Grimm had used. It wasn't possible for the parry to be from a normal attack. Whirlwind kick had a higher priority than normal attacks, and Lord Grimm would have certainly been sent flying. Pa 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 pa. The audience kept hearing the sound of punches and kicks hitting flesh again and again. Desert Dust had the upper hand. No, it wasn't only Desert Dust punching and kicking. Lord Grimm's Unspecialized was also using fighter skills to contend with Desert Dust at this close distance. It was close combat at a distance that couldn't get any closer. There was almost zero distance between them. Let alone a sword, even a dagger would be too long. Only punches and kicks could be used at this distance. Tyranny's fans felt exhilarated. If they fought like this, how could their captain not have the advantage? It was true that unspecialized characters had fighter skills, but how could they compare to a true striker? What's more, Han Wenking had immersed himself with this class for 10 years. At close combat, if he said he was second, who dared to say they were first? Not even Ye Xiu dared to. This time, they were right. Ye Xiu was proficient at all classes, but even so, his skill in this area couldn't compare to Han Wenking, who had been perfecting it for 10 years. In addition, there was a difference in their classes. Strikers were specialized in close combat. Desert Dust was outfitted in equipment specifically to buff his close combat capabilities. As for Lord Grimm, even though he had a full set of silver equipment, it was more all-rounded. So that's the case. The eyes of the various pro players watching the match suddenly lit up. Ye Xiu was very well-rounded. When he came out of retirement with his unspecialized Lord Grimm, he was displaying his knowledge as the glory textbook to the limit. Everyone felt their heads hurt facing him because no one could keep up with the constantly changing unspecialized. As a result, they would often be on the defensive. However, Han Wenking, Ye Xiu's rival of 10 years, was now forcefully suppressing Ye Xiu because he wasn't competing with Ye Xiu all around, or trying to figure out the constantly changing unspecialized. He was pulling Ye Xiu into his domain. By limiting the fight to close combat, even if Ye Xiu was proficient in all areas, many of his unspecialized skills couldn't be used in these conditions. He could only use the same method of fighting as Han Wenking to compete. His fundamentals at close combat may be exceptional, but it couldn't compare to Han Wenking's. The pro players watching immediately thought of ways to pull Ye Xiu into their area of expertise, but as they thought about it, most of the players immediately felt grieved. Even if they fought with Ye Xiu in their own domain, it wouldn't be enough to give them an overwhelming advantage against him. It seemed like only a god like Han Wenking with 10 years of experience in one area would be able to have this effect. The viewers all had their own thoughts, but the match continued. WushAWorldAudio.com. Everyone felt like Han Wenking would be able to hold the upper hand with this way of fighting, but they forgot that this situation couldn't continue forever because the two were in the air. Lord Grim's previous escape route had been cut off by desert dust. The two fought as they dropped towards the lava. Han Wenking didn't seem to notice. He was completely unconcerned. Desert dust's offense didn't expose any openings, so Yishu was helpless. He wanted to try get away, but at this close of a distance, he could only fight. Skills from other classes? There was no point thinking about them. If those skills were used, Han Wenking would mercilessly interrupt them because they were too slow. The instant the two characters were about to fall into the lava, desert dust suddenly trembled. Reinforced iron bones. He had unexpectedly activated this skill at such a crucial moment. Was he planning on using his increased defense and super armor to find an opportunity after they fell into the lava? Everyone thought those were his intentions, when Desert Dust suddenly used High Kick. High Kick had a knock-up effect. Han Wenking hadn't used the skill before. He knew that Yishu would definitely tank a movement displacement skill like High Kick and use the opportunity to escape, but even so, he decided to use it at this moment. Why? Even Yishu hesitated. If that kick had come earlier, he definitely would have took the hit. But using it at this moment? No matter how he looked at it, it must be some sort of trap. Block. Yishu reacted based on his understanding of Han Wenking. He didn't tank this very suspicious kick. He put up his arms to block it, but the kick suddenly changed direction and missed. Then, his legs suddenly swung down. Desert Dust's upper body seemed to want to rise up as a result. This is Eagle Stamp. This strange way of using the skill made Yishu hesitate again. He could only hastily try to block the attack. Pa! The kick struck Lord Grim's arms. Desert Dust used the momentum to leap into the air, while Lord Grim dropped down into the lava. Flames immediately enveloped Lord Grim. The lava constantly dealt damage to Lord Grim. And at the same time, at max level, Eagle Stamp could be used 5 times. Desert Dust had only used one previously, so he followed again another 4 times. Han Wenking, this isn't right. Quote, at this moment of life and death, Yishu still had the time to trash talk. Lord Grim was half immersed in the lava, the fire damage eating away at his health. As for Desert Dust, he was stepping on Lord Grim again, pogo sticking off his head. By using Eagle Stamp, would Desert Dust be able to get back to land? No. But by doing this, he would fall into the lava later, and Lord Grim would take more damage from the lava. As a result, Desert Dust would have a health lead. The brave Han Wenking only had victory on his mind against Yishu, and he would take these little selfish schemes to end chapter. The King's Avatar, Chapter 1538, The Boiling Rock. Audio source, WushAWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1538, The Boiling Rock. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Desert Dust looked like an eagle spreading his wings as he used Eagle Stamp. The stadium erupted with applause. They might not understand Han Wenking's true intentions, but the scene in front of them was showing Desert Dust repeatedly stepping on Lord Grim, forcing him into the lava. So what if Desert Dust would soon fall into the lava too? It was more than enough to make the Tyranny fans feel like they had the upper hand. It's not going to be so easy. The more perceptive viewers had already noticed that there were movements coming from Lord Grim. How could Yishu be so easy to deal with? Of course not. Just a second ago, he had the time to type out some trash talk. Hand seals. Hidden by the waves of lava from the fall, Lord Grimm's two hands moved in a blur. A ninjutsu seal was instantly completed. Even though Lord Grimm would certainly fall into the lava, he had been able to escape from Desert Dust's range, allowing him to use other skills. Puff. With a gentle puff, Lord Grimm turned into a cloud of smoke. The shadow clone had been instantly destroyed by the heat from the lava. Shadow clone technique. Lord Grimm had used the ninja skill commonly used for movement. Where was his real body? Pa. Splash. Two sounds one after the other. Lord Grimm appeared where the shadow clone had just disappeared from. What's going on? Everyone was confused. That obviously couldn't have been where Yishu had planned on moving to. There was only explanation. His shadow clone technique had somehow been interrupted. A replay. A replay was needed. No one understood what had happened in that instant. Only the two players on stage knew. Eagle Stamp. Number 6. After the 5 kicks from Eagle Stamp, Yishu immediately used a shadow clone technique. However, he hadn't expected a 6th kick to follow, and this 6th kick had interrupted his shadow clone technique. The shadow clone destroyed by the lava had been a failed clone. The real body hadn't been able to escape and was stepped on again. A 6th kick from Eagle Stamp had indeed been outside of Yishu's expectations, but he didn't think it was impossible. Eagle Stamp's limit was 5 kicks. After the level 75 level cap increase, the max level for Eagle Stamp had increased as well. The number of times it could be used was still 5, but this max level increase was only the max level that could be added using skill points. Equipment that increased skill levels could break through this max level limit and continue raising it. Evidently, Desert Dust had equipment that raised Eagle Stamp's level, and it looked like it raised it high enough for him to use 6 kicks. Unless you saw it in action, there was no way to know. Silver equipment stats were hidden. After 10 years, the current Desert Dust had no orange equipment. The viewers still didn't know what had happened, but they did see that the shadow clone technique had been interrupted. In any case, applause first. Amidst the applause, Lord Grimm swung his myriad manifestations umbrella out of the lava like a dragon flying out from the sea. The lava slid down from it, creating a rain of fire. The myriad manifestations umbrella was in its original form as it swung towards Desert Dust. The original umbrella form was considered a priest weapon. As a result, some people were able to determine what skill Lord Grimm had suddenly used. Night skill, heroic leap. There was nothing Han Wenking could do. Nothing. He could predict the shadow clone technique because it was a sub-level 20 skill. It was a skill that was a part of an unspecialized toolkit. Shadow clone technique was extremely useful in his situation, which was why he had paused after 5 kicks from Eagle Stamp. He had left an opening for Yishu. When he saw Lord Grimm form the seals, he had Desert Dust kick a 6th time, interrupting the ninjutsu art. But a heroic leap. If it was level 20 plus skill, it meant that it was a bonus skill added onto the myriad manifestation umbrella's priest form. Apart from class advancement and class awakening skills, any mid or high level skill of the same class could be added to a weapon. Teams frequently took advantage of this point. They made changes to the skills attached to their weapons to give a surprise to their opponents. However, there had never been a weapon like the Myriad Manifestations umbrella before. It had 12 different forms, which meant 12 different high-level skills encompassing all 6 superclasses. The surprise was too big and couldn't be eliminated. Han Wenking could predict the shadow clone technique, but there was no way he could have predicted a heroic leap. Han Wenking had made some precautions though. Reinforced iron bones. Before Desert Dust had used Eagle Stamp, he had activated Reinforced Iron Bones. The buff was still active on him. Han Wenking had the super armor active in case that Yizhu did something outside of his predictions. He hadn't thought that he could truly completely suppress Yizhu. If not, the legendary dynasty established in the early years of the Alliance wouldn't have been by excellent era, but tyranny. Lord Grimm jumped high out of the lava with a heroic leap. The strike from his umbrella looked extremely imposing too. But Han Wenking knew that the strike was flashy but not threatening. The attack priority from Heroic Leap didn't come until the user landed on the ground. No matter how fearsome Lord Grimm may look, just one punch from his Desert Dust would be enough to send him flying. But Han Wenking didn't want to do this. Send him flying away. Yizhu could take the opportunity to get back onto the land. And then with Desert Dust in the lava, wouldn't that just be suicide? The plan stays the same. He wasn't afraid of falling into the lava, but no matter what, he need to drag Lord Grimm with him. Desert Dust readied himself. Han Wenking stared closely at the path of Lord Grimm's weapon. Sure. The myriad manifestations umbrella changed forms. As expected, Han Wenking hadn't been surprised at all. He had guessed that Yizhu wouldn't actually use Heroic Leap to attack him. The attack wouldn't even be able to break Desert Dust's super armor. Yizhu will definitely use a different attack. Han Wenking had guessed right. His line of sight never left the myriad manifestations umbrella. As the umbrella quickly changed forms, it swung towards Desert Dust. I've been waiting. Desert Dust's two hands clapped together, empty-handed blade block. Locked in place. He locked the umbrella in place firmly. A dismantle skill. A block and then a throw. Go down. Desert Dust wanted to use the umbrella to throw Lord Grimm back into the lava, but to his surprise, his throw failed. How? In all his years as a striker, he had never seen empty-handed blade block miss after blocking an attack. A dismantle skill had two parts, a block and a throw. Although it consisted of two parts, they were linked together. After the block, it shouldn't be possible to avoid the throw. At this moment, although the myriad manifestations umbrella had been blocked, it hadn't finished transforming. The umbrella pulled open, and the ribs of the umbrella squeezed together in the form of an arc. It hung there as if it would fall off at any moment. This form is a scythe. From knight's sword into scythe. A scythe was a priest weapon, so it wouldn't affect the heroic leap because it was priest skill too. Priest skills. Lord Grimm pulled back on the umbrella. The form changed again, and the umbrella split into two halves, which flew back to Lord Grimm's hands as if they had grown wings. Fly back. Han Wenking realized what had happened. Spirit guidance. X-Source's skill, Spirit Guidance. It was an attack, where the weapon flew towards the target. In other words, when the myriad manifestations umbrella transformed from knight's sword to priest's scythe, it was considered as a flying weapon and not in Lord Grimm's hands. Dismantle skills worked on flying weapons, but in that case, it could only block, not throw. The other person was more than 10 steps away from you. How were you supposed to throw him? Although Lord Grimm was extremely close to Desert Dust, that was how the system judged it. Empty-handed blade block had blocked a flying weapon, so the block hadn't locked Lord Grimm in place. As a result, Lord Grimm could dodge the throw. After dealing with Desert Dust's attack, the umbrella split into Tomfass. A cold light glinted. Brawler skill, Poison Needle. Another skill attached to a weapon. At this close of a distance, there was nowhere to run. The Poison Needle hit. The damage wasn't high, nor was the dot threatening. However, Poison Needle broke super armor. Lord Grimm's poison needle was only level 1, even so, it removed super armor for up to 5 seconds. For the current situation, it was more than enough. 5 seconds was enough for the two to fall into the lava 8 times. The moment poison needle came out, Lord Grimm took a step forward. WashOurWorldAudio.com. There was nowhere to run to in the air, and with his super armor broken, Han Wenking's desert dust could only try to parry the blows. Pa pa pa. Splash. Pa pa. Eagle stamp. Lord Grimm also used an eagle stamp. It didn't matter if it dealt damage or if Han Wenking parried it. With 3 eagle stamps, desert dust fell into the lava. Lord Grimm finished it with 2 more stamps. The applause was still going. Tyranny's fans obviously didn't want to give Yishu applause. Happy's fans were in Tyranny's home stadium and weren't able to make such loud noises. The applause had been for desert dust breaking Lord Grimm's shadow clone technique, sending him into the lava again. But the reversal had happened too quickly. While the crowd was still clapping, Lord Grimm used heroic leap, soul guidance to cheat Desert Dust's empty-handed block poison needle to break the super armor, and then eagle stamp to send Desert Dust into the lava. This was how fast top pro players played. Using seconds to count was too slow. Tyranny's fans hadn't been able to stop their applause when Yishu finished his series of inputs. Their captain was now the one in the lava. Words couldn't describe how fast the reversal had been. How long could characters stay in the air? Even in this short amount of time, several back and forths had occurred. In the end, Desert Dust had fallen into the lava. Lord Grimm used Eagle Stamp to get into the air, and then with the skills available to him, who knew if he would be able to get back to land? There was nothing Han Wenking could do. However, he knew that if he let Lord Grimm get back to land, the fight would be over. He had to drag him down no matter what. Desert Dust flickered in the lava cloud body. His hand moved in a blur to grab Lord Grimm's retracting foot at a tricky angle. Just a bit off. Desert Dust hadn't fallen to the bottom yet. His body was still sinking. Although he could stretch his hands out, the sinking made him miss just by a bit. Suddenly, Lord Grimm dropped down into Desert Dust's hands. How? The more vigilant spectators thought that this was some sort of trap from Yishu, but the experts could immediately tell that Yishu hadn't intended for this to happen. Yishu couldn't have done anything about it. The grab from Desert Dust hadn't been a normal grab. Grappler skill, overhead toss. In today's life and death match, Han Wenking had given Desert Dust this skill. Overhead toss. It was a grab with extremely high priority against those in the air. It was through this high priority that he was able to reach his target. Toss. Lava splashed everywhere. This time, Lord Grimm didn't just drop into it. After being tossed by Desert Dust, Lord Grimm split apart the lava. The lava fell back and swallowed Lord Grimm whole. Everyone was dumbstruck. They didn't know what happened when the lava swallowed someone completely. From their intuition, shouldn't the person be burned into nothing but bones? Han Wenking didn't dare relax though. He stepped forward, relying on his intuition to continue attacking Lord Grimm. But before he could take a second step, a figure suddenly appeared from behind Desert Dust. It was as if a mass of flames had crashed into Desert Dust. Ninjutsu, underground tunneling technique,